You're listening to the RM Podcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian,
and drinking from his delicious moon mug. Oh, look at it, savoring the taste.
Keith Cheatham.
He's here with us this week.
Moon.
And boy, oh boy, do we have...
M-O-O-N.
That spells moon. Do we have a fun episode, not just this week, but also next week, too. That's right, guys. I already know what next week's episode is going to be all about.
The future.
So we're saying that this week is special, next week's special, but any other time's not.
More or less.
It's a falsehood.
That's not a falsehood. I just spoke it. It's
Every
true.
week that
He has
people
spoken.
can...
I have spoken. Baby Yoda. Whoa, spoiler. No, I'm just kidding. Although I will say, I think it's slightly spoilerish that the interwebs, the Googles they've posted that everywhere.
There's memes, there's
and
all
I'm
kinds
just
of
like,
stuff.
gosh,
Yeah,
sakes,
it's all
guys,
over.
give people some time.
No.
Give them a month.
Well,
You don't think so?
If you don't have Disney Plus by now and
You're
you're
a
not watching The
jackass.
Mandalorian, then you're stupid. Exactly.
That's sorry.
It's your
Well,
own fault.
As you can already tell, this is a great episode. You know, we've already got a lot of great stuff planned. But yes, next week's going to be special. Our Thanksgiving
You
episode.
can avoid spoilers. My sister didn't see Endgame
I
for
know.
4 months and didn't get it spoiled.
What?
You can't have any cookies. Like, you literally cannot Google, like, Star Wars. You can't do anything because the minute you do, those ads and stuff, like,
They
Facebook
pop up.
Facebook will recognize, oh, you're interested in Avengers, so then it starts throwing that stuff at you.
Yes.
So literally, she didn't Google it. She didn't look up anything about any of the actors. She went that long until, like, it came out in the home video and finally saw it. I was like, wow, that's impressive, because I didn't think you could do
that is impressive,
Yeah.
but at the same time...
I asked her, because I was like, man,
Why
there's stuff on
didn't she see
Facebook
it in the
every
theater?
day. She doesn't go to the movies
she
very
can
much.
You know
a
what?
babysitter,
But that's
you know?
crazy.
Yeah.
Even without Miranda going to the theater 15 times,
It
it
still
still
beat
beat Avatar.
Avatar, yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah,
hey, something to be
Yeah.
thankful about. you know?
Yeah, right?
But no, we do have
Well,
a
we'll
great
talk
episode.
about what we're thankful for next week.
That's right.
Yeah.
And again, we have a recorded show for you guys next week, but still tune in.
I was just gonna let
Eat
people
your
think
turkey.
it was live.
Yeah, they're going to be like, man, you guys
Well,
are legit because you're doing this on
on
Thanksgiving.
Y'all are dedicated.
No,
Yeah.
we're not. We're going to our family for Thanksgiving.
That's
You
right.
should too.
Yeah.
But we
Eating a
are still
turducken.
dedicated because we still want to have a show for you all.
That's true.
So we
Yeah.
recorded a show just for you
It's
guys.
nice. I like it.
It's going to be great.
You eat, and then when
I
you're
think
in
it's
your
like the second
tryptophan
best
coma,
episode.
you watch our show
Yes.
instead of football.
Yeah. Well, what game is on? Come on.
I never watched
don't
because
watch
there's
football.
never
Nobody
anybody.
ever.
I don't like
they
football,
keep
so.
it on in the background. You keep it
Well,
on in the background.
I
That's
like
what you
football,
do.
but there's never anybody playing that I'm actually interested in watching, so I don't watch on Thanksgiving. It's
That's
like
true.
You should gather around the family table and have your laptop or your phone or iPad set up at
Yeah.
the end of the table.
Yep.
And you should watch the
We're
Red
part of
Moon
your family
podcast.
now.
That's it.
We
while
need to
you
be at
eat.
your family table for
Yes.
Thanksgiving.
That's
yeah.
what. And
exactly.
you know what? That's right. You put us at the end. You can even put a
Put
little
us at
bib
the-
around
you even
us.
put us at
Yeah,
the
You know,
kiddies'
put
table.
a
put a plate
give
in
it-
front of
make
us.
us a
Yeah,
plate.
make us a plate.
Make us a plate, just like Brian does every week.
Yeah, and you
You
can,
know.
you can smear some food on the screen like we're eating it or
Yeah,
something.
nom, nom, nom.
And then you can be like, "Oh, Sean, you got food all over you. You have to wipe it off."
Yes.
Man, we're
That's
gonna
so messed up.
honestly,
so
is it
messed up.
sad that I hope we have fans like that someday?
that are trying to spoon feed us through the TV screen.
Yeah, but
Oh, I'm
then
sure we do somewhere. Yeah.
But then I'm worried because I hope that when we get to having those fans, then I won't want them anymore because then it'll be creepy.
When we have those fans, I
You
hope
know.
we also can
Yeah.
afford security so that those fans don't kidnap us and try to feed us at home.
Right. Right.
true.
We're going to
Very
need a
true.
security sponsor.
Oh,
Yeah.
ADT, you want to sponsor us?
no one's ever going to try to kidnap us.
No, we would annoy them way more
Yeah.
if they would let us go.
I
quick.
say that, and then like this weekend we're going to like text messages like, "Someone kidnapped." What? I don't know.
I got six.
It would be one of us.
I'm weird. I have like anxiety and paranoia sometimes, so I'll say things and I'm like, what if it happens now because I said it? Like,
Yeah.
it weirds me
Oh,
out.
everybody does that.
It's
Doesn't
like-
everybody do that?
It's like
You
I'm not going to get murdered
Yeah.
on my way home tonight. Then I'm like, crap, someone might try to kill me because
That's
I
why I
said
always
that.
loved when it
Yeah.
was like in high school. It was like carpe diem, live every day as if it's your last. And I'm like, what if it is?
Yeah. Well,
Then
we-
you really
we were
start to
recording
think.
the last episode, and we were talking about being thankful for being alive, and I'm just like,
We're gonna die now.
man,
Wouldn't
shouldn't
it
have said anything.
Would it not have been great if like we didn't air this one, but we had a
jinxed us.
recorded episode for the future,
Yeah.
and we died before this one started?
Shit. See, now one of us is gonna
Man.
die before next week.
Yeah.
You gotta quit saying things.
Just saying.
Dang
Well,
on.
no, if you die next week, it's okay because we at least have one more show without you or with you.
But that's the point. I'll die, and that'll be the last show I'm ever on.
Yeah, then we'll have like
And
a
then
nice.
you'll come back and be like, Keith's dead for
Well,
real this time.
Yeah, we'll still do our normal, our sending off.
It's
All
like,
right,
and the
this has
Indians
gotten-
can't bring him back
this
because
just took a
he's
turn.
really dead.
It's okay to be dark this week. It's not Thanksgiving.
I guess that's true.
Oh.
We have a review this week. let's move on.
We do have a review about racing and
Oh,
things where people can die.
about cars.
Wow, so we're going back into bleak territory.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean,
my gosh.
you wreck at 200 miles per hour, you're dead.
Well, yeah, that's a good
That'll
setup
do
for
it,
our review.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, racing is definitely
True story.
dangerous.
Don't drive a Ford.
It'll kill you.
That was it.
That's that's what I learned from this movie. Fords will kill you.
Fords will kill you. Found
Nothing's
on the
ever
road dead.
Nothing truer has ever been spoken. Here's our review of Ford v Ferrari.
V.
There are legendary rivalries that will forever go down in history. We all have our own ideas when it comes to sports, politics, and religion, and the things that we are passionate about. If there's one group of people that are passionate about what they love, it is car and racing aficionados. One of the greatest rivalries in sports car history came during the 1966 World Sports Car Championship season at Le Mans. This was the rivalry of Ford versus Ferrari. Ford v Ferrari tells the true story of legendary American sports car racer and designer Carroll Shelby and English racer and engineer Ken Miles, portrayed by Matt Damon and Christian Bale respectively. Directed by James Mangold, over the course of the film, Ford v Ferrari depicts the real-life events of friends Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles as they are recruited by the Ford Motor Company to build a car that could defeat Ferrari at Le Mans. At the time, Ford had been struggling, and it was thought by executives such as Lee Iacocca, vice president of Ford, played by John Bernthal, that a win at Le Mans could give Ford the publicity it needed to turn the company around, a fact that would later prove true. But what the film showcases even more than business politics and the race itself is the unbelievable friendship between Carroll and Ken and the remarkable minds that built the GT40. Mangold managed to create a drama that adheres to the fundamental facts and showcases two legends as they were really known. With an impeccable performance by Christian Bale as Ken Miles, the stubborn yet brilliant driver and engineer, and the uncompromising faith of his friend Carroll Shelby on display for Matt Damon, Ford v Ferrari is an adrenaline rush. With gorgeous cars and riveting races driven by two characters that are larger than life, yet really lived, Ford v Ferrari manages to keep you glued to the screen. The film isn't revolutionary by any means, and may even be a tad predictable at times, yet these are the events that happened, and it's hard to fault a film for telling the truth. Overall, the emotional impact lands, and the true brilliance of who Ken and Carroll were shines through. For anyone who's a fan of sports cars or just loves a solid story of friendship, Ford v Ferrari delivers, firing on all cylinders. I give Ford v Ferrari 3 out of 4 stars. Yes.
Yes.
3 out of 4. It's a
You
good
ever-
movie.
You ever take a dump that just like soothes you?
Soothes you?
I get it just sets you at ease. Like you just have a
Sets
poop
you
that's
at-
so good that you just feel right for the rest of the day.
Absolutely, I have.
Yeah.
I have, yeah.
I've had
Yeah.
that.
Not in a
many times.
while.
I did it
Not in a
before the
while.
show. Well, that cigar
You
that
did
we
two
had,
before the show.
that cigar, man. Well, I had coffee too, so
Oh.
maybe the
That's what
combo
it
of
was. It was the
cigar
coffee.
and
The coffee does it.
The cigar always gets me, but I mean
Yeah.
the coffee
Yeah.
cigar combo was
Yep.
just like
It did it. It
Pow,
did it too.
pow.
pow,
Powering on
They
all
were-
cylinders.
They were a GT40 was running around in my colon
Oh, man. It was
But
running
it-
the Le Mans.
24 hours.
with the whole strap.
I've
with
had
the whole
those
stretch,
before too. I've had a 24-hour Le Mans in my
Oh.
pants.
Then you have the ones that don't leave the starting line, and you have to go get some. What's that you drank? You had to get.
What was that stuff? You said it was the worst tasting thing, but it worked.
That
magnesium citrate.
yes, yeah. That's what you have to give.
That's
a
like
Ford
pouring
to keep
battery
it going.
acid into your intestines.
And it just, man, it
It's
makes
like
it all.
it's like putting pure ethanol
It's
in
like
your gas
before
tank.
you're done drinking. Before you're done drinking the bottle, you're already
you're going.
You're getting ready to go. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is we should have had this conversation like next week on our Thanksgiving episode.
You're gonna need.
Well, that's what
You're
happens
gonna-
magnesium
That's what you're gonna
citrate.
do
Yeah.
after you have
After
all
all
that
the
turkey.
carbs, because
Yeah.
Thanksgiving food is all carbs.
Yeah, that's why you go to sleep.
I
You're in
know.
like a carb coma.
I mean, it's all delicious.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
it's- I
true.
mean, it's worth it. So
Ford,
I hope
Ford v Ferrari, anyone? Trying to get back on track. But
3 out of 4
Oh
stars.
man, with the puns back
Yeah.
on track. Oh man, like crazy. All
well, you know what I
cylinders.
enjoyed most about that movie?
what?
Christian Bale. And I'm being honest right now, Christian Bale.
He wasn't channeling Satan
But
in this movie.
maybe, but
No.
if so, he was doing a good job.
He was doing a good job. I
But
agree.
other than that, I felt like most of the movie was fairly average. But I do think Christian Bale's performance was above average. I mean, it was.
I agree.
It was awesome.
It was
Yeah.
one movie that I walked out of with, thinking Christian Bale was not playing himself.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it's not
Yeah.
that he's not a good actor. Don't get me wrong.
He just has the same type of roles.
But
all
yes,
the time,
and he doesn't step outside that. I mean, even as Batman, it's like, okay, yeah, he can knock off.
Swear
this-
to me.
Yeah. It's like he can knock off that accent,
Yeah.
but he's still his normal, his mannerisms and his own,
Yeah.
acting is
Well,
just the same.
when it shows him as Bruce. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think, but when you see him in this film, it's like he really channeled.
Oh yeah, he did.
I think
a great job.
I mean, for it to be a real life character, or a real life
for
person
anyone who
and he's
doesn't
having a
know,
model,
the 1966 24-hour Le Mans race is what this movie's about, where Ford was determined to beat Ferrari. The Ford had been down in sales for quite a few years. They weren't doing too hot, and they had come up with the idea that if they could beat Ferrari, that would boost their sales. People would want Ford again because that's the car that beat Ferrari, which proved to be true. I mean,
Yeah.
it did happen. But
That
there
was
were
because
also
Ferrari had dominated.
yes for
So
years.
it wasn't just they wanted to pinpoint that car.
No,
out.
it just
Ferrari
beat
had
that-
won
Ferrari
the
had
last
won
4
everything.
years,
Yeah, so
and they were
it
the
was,
Ford
that was the
consecutive
car
years,
to
yeah.
beat.
And then, of course,
Yeah.
Ford won for like the next 4 years, and then never went back for
Well,
some reason.
no, I read that the reason they didn't go back was because after this 1969 rules changed, and even the type of cars you could admit
Gotcha.
were no longer acceptable. So it was like the type of cars were almost like these
They're like, we're
concept
tired.
cars.
They were like,
Yeah.
we're tired of
And-
Americans winning this, so now we're going to make up rules so they can't compete anymore.
Well,
That's what they have to do.
it's funny
Because
though
we're the
because
best.
other than the GT40, it's like Ford.
That GT40,
Not a fan of the
though.
Ford.
Yeah.
So
Man, even it'll kill you though.
Oh
well,
man, too soon.
Actually, it wasn't the GT40 that killed Ken Miles. It was a prototype that him and Shelby were working on together.
Yeah,
so,
it was the it was like
Cobra
the-
something.
Yeah, the Mark IV or some new.
But I
car,
mean,
yeah.
it was a good movie. Like I said, Christian Bale, I thought his performance stood out more than anything else in the movie. Sean mentioned this before the podcast started, but Matt Damon was just Matt Damon. I mean, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't.
bad. I didn't
No.
think
He wasn't bad. I just thought he was average.
I mean, you use the word average. The way I felt about the movie as a whole was I thought it felt more like if it would have had Christian undertones, I would have said this is on par with most of the faith-based films I've seen.
I don't think I see. I
like
think most of those
I really,
are bad.
I know, and I felt like this was a made-for-TV movie.
Yeah, I didn't
It
get
felt
that.
very mediocre and very other than Christian Bale's performance and other than the amazing camera work with the cars.
Yeah,
which
the
is
races
something
were
that I don't.
amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. But there were so many moments and not the dialogue necessarily, but so many scenes that I really just felt like were kind of like it didn't even feel like a movie to me. It felt more like a soap opera. I don't know how to explain it. It was just a very average, like you said, the word average. That's what it felt like. To
I
me.
don't know.
I didn't get a sense that this was like a.
For me, it actually felt. I thought it was. I think because of the true story nature behind it and how predictable the story seemed,
and maybe that's
added
where I'm
to
getting
it.
hung up.
But I
And-
mean,
and
they
for-
were pretty faithful to. I mean, there
Yeah.
were some minor things, but I mean, for
Yeah.
the basic details were true.
Yeah.
So I applaud them for that because most based on true story films actually change way more than they did.
Yeah.
In fact, this and Midway both, like, I was really impressed with how faithful they were to the actual facts.
And maybe
so.
maybe that's the issue, because Midway was another movie that I walked out and I told you, I was like, this felt like something I could have seen on
the dialogue and acting were terrible.
Yeah,
but
it did. It felt like something that I could have seen on television.
It's
like,
weird because this movie does settle with you in terms of something you have seen before,
Yeah.
and it kind of settles. It's kind of this flavor of a feel good movie, of uplifting in terms of the.
It's not going to get any Oscar nods or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not.
Well, other than Christian Bale,
Well, Christian Bale
he
could.
did a fantastic
He was
job.
the only
Yeah.
person I think in the movie that deserved a notable reference.
And I mean, I'm glad because I mean, with the story being like so intrinsically about, it's supposed to be about Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles' relationship, but it kind of ended up being more about what happened to Ken Miles. So I mean, I'm glad that at least with it focusing on his character, at least they got somebody to do it justice and gave a great performance. So I mean, there's that. But some of the other stuff, like I don't know the actor's name that played Henry Ford II. They said historically that there's not a lot about info about him, so people don't really know what he's like, except for like the people that were closest to him. So I felt like he was kind of stereotypical, and I mean it served the purpose of the movie, but I felt like they went that route because since they didn't know much about him, they're like, well, it's easy just to make him this type of character to move the plot along. So I can agree with you on that I felt like, well, he's just the typical like big business. I want to make a good name and money. So, but I mean,
I thought after reading a little bit more about the true story, like the character that Josh Lucas portrays, like I know that there were executives and stuff at Ford that wanted to kind of kiss butt to Henry Ford II, and they wanted to kind of be in charge of some things, but there wasn't the animosity and the like I'm going to lord it over you feel that this movie portrayed. Like that just didn't exist in the real story. And they went through the movie in I'm trying to think, they go straight from Daytona to Le Mans, and there was like 3 years that they went to Le Mans and lost.
Yeah.
And there was 1 year they went and all of the Ford cars didn't even place. So they didn't show that in the movie. They make it seem like
it was almost
straight
like this,
from they went to Daytona and then they went to Le Mans and they go once before and they leave Ken Miles at home, which that didn't happen. He went. He just didn't get to drive. He was not back at home.
He was
at the garage working on the cars.
I will say one aspect that was true is he was a runner for the Triple Crown until the incident happened.
Right. No doubt. And I think that was maybe the one scene that really tripped me up and gave me a bad vibe, was that when he's listening to it on the radio and he's like, one scene it shows him cranking the wrench under the hood and he's like, no, don't go there. And then it shows him under the car, and he's like, "You're going too fast. Slow it down." And I'm like, "This is stupid. Like, this is just stupid."
Why didn't you like that
was
part?
like phoned in.
I feel like
I just didn't like that
would
part
be
at
like
all.
that.
I think all of that, though, to me, a lot of those scenes, and especially it's a 2-hour film.
Yeah.
And it's like the glimpsing. I can forgive him for kind of passing up the years of history that weren't involved, because they show enough of that struggle throughout the process of them making the GT40.
Yeah.
But I think those little essences of it's building character, and it's just showing you that he is involved from the ground up, and how integral
he was
was.
a major part of.
And it
building
even
the
came out
GT40.
that the whole point of this film being made was kind of Carroll Shelby's. He was very particular about how Ken was remembered,
and
he was
haunted
more
him
worried
his
about
whole
his.
life.
Yeah, he was haunted because he was more
that was
worried
his
about
best friend. Yeah.
about how Ken's legacy was left behind, and he didn't want him to have. He felt like there were so many times he did go to bat for him, but then at the end of the day, there were still enough times where he was he was out of bounds, and he couldn't be. He was stepped on by the Ford leadership.
Yeah, I watched.
And so it was almost one of these instances where I think for the movie, it was kind of a farewell to Ken, and to give him a blessing for his family and say, this is the great milestone. These are the great milestones he crossed, and this is what he should be remembered for.
Yeah.
And I think the movie did that, and I think ultimately,
I agree.
It in the moments where it is tense and in the moments where it is about a relationship between two friends, I thought it nailed that.
I agree.
And I just thought for the most part, even in those instances where you could tell it was predictable, or you've seen a movie like this before, I didn't think that was necessarily a bad thing.
I think maybe one of the things that hurt it for me was that it wasn't tense enough. I felt like you said it plainly, you said it's a feel-good movie, and
Yeah.
it does. The movie feels good through the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's camaraderie. It's building. What man doesn't like seeing these cars?
I think that's
and
what I
all this
liked
kind of
about it was
stuff. And I did
their
like
friendship,
that.
though.
And it's like the only tense moment was really at the end when Carroll Shelby has to go and he wants to give the wrench to his son.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm just like, that was really the only moment where I really felt any. I mean, even the moments with the Ford execs calling in and saying, no, tell them to slow down, and we want this photo finish and all this kind of stuff, and you're just like, what? Like, I know that really happened, but I didn't feel any intensity at all.
Oh,
I'm like,
I did
they're-
during the race.
They're gonna
Yeah.
do it. And
I say I definitely did during the race.
I
I
think there were
felt
a
like
few
throughout
moments-
most
Yeah.
of the race, and I think that's where they wanted it though. I
Mhm.
think to me, everything leading up to that was good fodder for building the relationship
Mhm.
between the 2
Mhm.
and showing you that. I think there was still some rough around the edges. You see kind of this Carroll Shelby and Ken character of they have a little bit in common, but it's also this forming of their bond throughout all of this.
Well, I was gonna say I've
And-
watched a few old interviews of Carroll Shelby and everything, and there's not a single interview you can pull up of him where he doesn't like almost break down in tears when he starts talking about Ken Miles.
Yeah.
So I did love the fact that as far as their relationship goes, they did nail that, and that Shelby did go to bat for Ken Miles repeatedly, and I mean that was his best friend, and
Yeah.
that all he wanted was for Ken to get what was owed to him because
Another thing
they
that
both felt he was cheated.
I really liked about the film was ultimately, and I mean, call me cheesy, but I did think it was something we haven't had in a long time, which was, it was a feel-good movie also, not just towards, camaraderie, but also towards, ingenuity. And when you
Yeah.
have that mindset of we can overcome, and it has that American ingenuity mindset of what I think gave rise to, it's like, I mean, funny enough, it's like it's kind of a leftist show, but the movie or the show Newsroom on HBO from way back when, I love that the very opening scene in that show is Jeff Daniels talking about how it's like Americans we basically now just bicker back and forth. Where are the days we built big taller buildings than anybody else?
They
We
show
built
that video
bridges and
goes around Facebook
all the time.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I like what
Yeah.
the meaning of his message, and it's like you see that in this film from the very beginning. It's like they have something, it comes from the selfishness of an American, businessman who just wants to make more money and say my car's best. But it also comes from this background of why not? Like if we put our mind to it and we put it to the test, and that's the thing that I love is that it comes down to Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles, these two guys who are literally just. I think that's the one thing I love too about
a lot
them
of times-
framing this
Yeah.
message around Ken's character is it's like, yeah, he is some backwoods, hick. So what? He can get out there, he knows his stuff, and he knows exactly what it takes to make this happen. So you up there in your office, if you don't come down and actually listen to the small guy, you don't know. And I love the scene where Carroll Shelby takes Ford out into the car
That was
and
maybe
makes him piss
that
his
was maybe
pants.
my favorite
I love that.
scene.
I love that,
And I
yeah.
thought the guy that was playing Henry Ford,
Remarkable.
He did a
when
great job.
he starts crying and laughing and stuff at the same time,
That was
like
great,
that
yeah.
was
Yeah.
great. Now his acting through the rest of the film,
Subpar. It was. It
yeah,
wasn't
he,
subpar.
he played
bad.
a
It was
pompous.
just-
it was
he
exactly
played a
what you'd
pompous prick.
expect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he played it pretty well. But
He did a
yes,
good job.
That
It was
scene
just
was
a
great.
stereotypical role, but
Right.
I was
Yeah,
just gonna
exactly.
say though, I was just gonna add on top of what you're saying though, is that sometimes like that drive to be the best is what creates ingenuity because sometimes, and I mean not for everybody, some people who
Yeah.
are just thinking about money they don't get it, but when you want to be the best, I mean when you're like Steve Jobs and you're coming up with how do I be the best? And there are people that can prove it. He was one. The original Henry Ford was one. Ken Miles, Carroll Shelby. I mean, there's people throughout history when you look at like so much that I mean that strive to
Well, and I think
do
that's-
something no one else has done and
Yeah.
be better than everybody else.
And I think that
you
what
create.
you just said there too about even just throwing Ken's name in there, it was
Yeah.
like that was what this movie was about. This movie was about, putting the spotlight on somebody who you wouldn't necessarily put in the ranks of a Henry Ford or a Steve Jobs, and yet at the same time, it's those people's legacy is
Yeah.
built on the back and the shoulders of those
Yeah.
who are underneath them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the people that their invention and they get the credit, but still to move that invention
Somebody
forward
has to.
are
I
other
mean,
people
you have to
who
have a
pushed that.
Wozniak out there somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so 3 out of 4 stars for Ford v Ferrari. definitely worth checking out.
Yeah,
though. Absolutely. And it's a feel-good movie. So
it's not going to be one that I'll watch like over and over again.
No.
But I mean, I would
No.
check it out again.
I mean,
I'd
it's
watch
like
it again.
you've got Tucker, you've got The Aviator, you've got this movie, there's a lot of movies about the same thing, about the little guy
yes.
that makes something good and someone bigger wants to buy it and take credit and I just it's a good one of those movies.
Well, and I will say this too.
But
It's
it's not any
actually,
different.
believe it or not, too, I like the father-son element. And,
Yeah,
and
I
I
did.
will say,
Yeah.
for somebody, other than the intense moments of the the movie, truthfully,
yeah, when
if
he's
you're
on the
one- if
runway
you-
at night with his son, like that was
That
a
was
great
really
scene.
awesome.
That was a
Fantastic
great
scene.
scene. Yeah.
and what I
He's talking
love
about
too
the perfect line.
is if you want to go see a family film and you're looking for something next week for
This has
Thanksgiving,
the F word in it about 4 or 5 times.
it does.
So, yeah.
Oh well, hey, it's still a family-friendly movie.
It's an effing family movie.
I thought it had a great element of.
No, it does. It does.
It
just,
does,
it
but
has
there is-
language, so
there
I wouldn't
is
take my kids to see it.
Yeah,
I just totally overlooked that. You know how you
Yeah.
see so many of those films that you're just like,
Yeah.
what F word?
What?
What?
It's like when you watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Yeah.
Ford v Ferrari, it doesn't register.
No, all right. So Ford v Ferrari, 3 out of 4 stars.
Yeah.
Go check it out in the theaters. Oh, I think we're ready to move on to our headlines this week.
I think we are.
And we
Okay.
actually do have an interesting headline.
All right, let's hear them.
We've been knocking on Netflix for quite a while now.
Well, everybody does. Well,
Yeah.
we gave them props for our Nickelodeon deal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We tried to give them a leg up, but basically
They're
ever
not,
since
they're not Movie Pass. We haven't completely
I was gonna say,
condemned
let's
them.
be honest. Since Movie Pass died, who else do we have to hit on? So Netflix has become top dog. But no, it does
It's 'cause
revolve
they
around.
are top dog.
True. But then again, they also keep making decisions that who knows? Maybe it's their whole point of no press or bad press is still press. It's like there is no such thing as bad press. So it's like maybe that's the route they're going.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they are in the headlines again this week because cinematographers now who make original content for Netflix are required to shoot their movies in HDR, high dynamic range. However, this kind of came as a surprise to cinematographers who realized this because some cinematographers who had been filming and in production for several months now are just now finding this out and are like, wow, thanks, Netflix.
For the
that's
heads
not
up.
a problem, but we wish we could have known a little bit
Before
sooner.
we started,
Yeah. So with that being the case, the question is here Netflix is in the middle of controversy of demanding something that, yes, I think is a good and a plus, but yet are they just transparent enough? Why do they not get ahead of the game and try to actually work with the filmmakers themselves? Why are they constantly shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to their relationship?
I think
with
it's
the
a
filmmaker?
good idea. I think if there's something already in production, maybe Netflix should just be like, hey, if you're already in production, let's go ahead and just do what we're doing and we'll make all future movies HDR. But yeah, I think it's fine for them to say from now on, all of our original content will be HDR. That's cool. But yeah, to be like, oh, we got to do it. We're doing it right this moment. And then to leave these cinematographers hanging like, well, crap, we've already done 6 months of work that we are going to have to go back and completely redo if we have to do it in HDR. So
Yeah.
it's I think it is like what you said. It's one of those things where Netflix are trying to be the best, but rather than be a Ken Miles, they're being a Henry Ford II.
Well, in Netflix's defense, a lot of the streaming services that are out right now, like of course Disney Plus just came out, so almost all of the content on there has been upscaled to 4K, and some of it's been released in HDR. Apple
especially newer
TV's
stuff,
probably going to have a lot of that stuff, but if you get on Amazon Prime, which is another huge movie streaming service, and they've got their own original shows, not all of their stuff is in 4K HDR.
Neither is Hulu's. Yeah,
And neither is Hulu's. So I think in their defense, they're trying to make their content all HDR and 4K so that they can be one of the services that has the most.
and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I would rather see it that way. And it's also important to point out too that HDR doesn't necessarily mean 4K.
Yeah.
You can have
No,
HDR
right.
and 1080.
Yeah.
So even though like some of Netflix's series are 1080 but they say HDR,
yeah.
I don't think the filmmakers should have to make their film that way if that's not how they want to. I think you're telling it's like telling the painter, no, you can't use it. You can't do this unless you use this brush.
Now here's the
Well,
thing.
if you're paying
But
for it,
I
then
was
you
gonna say,
should
but if
tell
you're
the- yeah.
paying for that, do you think Netflix should be like, for instance, they're not pushing all of their content or all of the content on Netflix to be HDR, but they are pushing any
Their
of their
original
content.
content.
Yeah, just their original.
And
Right.
so, do you agree with them to push their original content?
They're paying
in
for it.
that
I
way?
say, yeah. I mean,
Are they fully paying for it though, or do they have other production companies that have a hand in there?
now, yeah, if it's something where like
That's what I'm saying. When you
Yeah.
watch a Netflix original film, it pops up and says Netflix original film. Then it says 10 different production companies.
Right.
yeah, sometimes
They
they
didn't
go
pay
to
for all
award.
of it.
Sometimes they go to award circuits and buy their movies. Yeah, it's true.
And and that's going to be my question is, okay, fine if you have this standard for any of the original content that you're paying for and you are specifically saying
but
this
yeah,
is
how
made
do
for
you
Netflix.
enforce
Right.
that?
But if you
you're
but
gonna
if you
buy
go
someone else's,
if you go to a film festival and you buy up a movie that isn't HDR,
that's like saying we're only going to buy movies
Yeah.
if they were filmed
Yeah.
in HDR.
Does
It's like,
that-
that limits them to what they can buy?
which hey, Hollywood would love, wouldn't they? Because
Yeah.
then they're
Yeah.
like, oh, Netflix doesn't get a handle on
But
all
see,
their movies.
Then again, the cameras are different, and that's equipment's probably much more expensive, so production costs are going to be higher.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's kind of like if you're Netflix telling me I've got to film my movie in HDR, then I'm going to say buy me the camera.
yeah.
You know, pay you, if you're going to have to front the whole
And,
bill.
and here's the thing. And what if they say yes to that? But here we've talked about this before in the show. The fact that Netflix itself has already been in a bind when it comes to the money that they're putting into their own original
Yeah.
content.
they're hiking
not-
prices and still losing money.
and,
so
and still putting a lot of crap ton of money into their original content, but yet at the
they
same
haven't
time,
been in the black in years.
yeah. And so with that being the case, do they really have the weight to throw around here?
I don't know.
They'll throw it around whether they have the weight or not. They're Netflix.
Yeah, that may be
and
true.
I think that's where a lot of the controversy comes from. Is it's Netflix once again throwing weight around when they may not necessarily have to or even need to right now. It's like, yes, it's good to offer the best content and try to be out there. I get that. I appreciate that. Because I would prefer to watch everything in 4K HDR if I had the choice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't want to pay $20 a month because you have to have everything in HDR. It's like, what's the greater good here? And I think that's what Netflix has lost sight of is not, yes, it'll make their service better, but if it ends up being worse because you skyrocket the prices or you don't even have as much content
Right.
because
Yeah.
you're
And I
limiting
think-
out
I
the
think
amount of
to me,
content due
it's
to
funny
HDR.
because I agree with you. I think I fall more on the side of like I don't mind that Netflix, because we've talked about this whole purist mentality, and like I'm all for manufacturers and directors and filmmakers, like everybody in the film industry sitting down with people with technology to figure out what's the best workflow to in terms of getting it from actually on set to my home theater. And it's like, if I want to be able to not just have to pay a premium price to go to the theater and enjoy it, but also want to take that experience home, I'm all for this whole process of trying to make that transition. And I love that Netflix is sticking up for us in that way, who are trying to say, no, we love film. We are purists. We actually, why is the Academy trying to fight us? Roma was a great movie that got nominated for all these awards. But then at the same time, I'm like, okay, Netflix, I don't fault you on that. Where I fault you is that when did you tell the cinematographers? Like, when did you sit down and say, well, yeah, this is what we need to do to push this, this framework forward, but yet we're not going to go to the drawing board and actually figure out a way to implement it proactively at the pace of the film industry. We're just going to enforce it and then say, yeah, I got to jump on board, or otherwise, you're going to have to pay to go and reshoot everything that you just shot.
Yeah.
It's like, to me, that's the bigger issue here is, when is Netflix going to be the company that actually does get in line with the film industry and actually sit down with them at the table and say, hey, let's hash some things out. Let's talk about what it is we want to see from the film industry moving forward.
Yeah.
And we're going to figure out a game plan to make that happen.
I mean, it really sounds like from reading the article, and I just reading through it again, it's kind of, to me, like one of the main problems is lack of communication.
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that the rules have been there, just nobody's reading them before they start shooting their film. It says right here that they've got all of this already planned out, but nobody told them. And I'm thinking, well, if you're making a movie for Netflix and they say, here's our guidelines or here's our policy and whatever, you should probably read that. And maybe you would see that it says all of our content, or at least this percentage of your shoot has to be done in HDR. Because it doesn't even say here that it has to be the full movie. It has to be a certain amount of the content or the shots have to be HDR. So I don't know what that really means. To me, if you're going to film it, you should film it all that way. But it also sounds like this part right here says an estimated 160 million Netflix viewers worldwide are consuming content on HDR configured tablets and mobile phones. So the issue of image quality being compromised is a serious one. Panel members all agreed. So HDR is something that everybody wants. That's the future. So at some point, we all need to be shooting in HDR.
Yeah,
and
I think we
if
will
Netflix is trying to usher that in, I don't fault them for it.
Exactly.
It seems to me like you need to fault the director and the cinematographers and stuff for not reading the rule book that Netflix has. I'm not saying there's actually a rule book, but it says right here that they have
Instructed,
guidelines. It's
yeah.
instructed, and they just didn't listen or didn't pay attention or didn't read that part.
But here's the thing, and that's where, again, I'm going to argue on behalf of the filmmakers, only because in my mind, I'm like, there's a hell of a lot more that I'm worried about in pre-production than just worried about, and trust me, those are things that do come up. It's not like you would just overlook HDR or 3D or something.
Yeah.
It's, it's not something like, oh yeah, we meant to add 3D to the shot. Let's go back and reshoot it. It's like those are things that are planned out ahead of time. But even still, if I'm a filmmaker, my first and last priority is to make sure that my story is being told the way I want it to.
Oh, yeah.
And if that includes HDR, great. If it doesn't, if at the end of the day, my whole purpose, I mean, think about the movie The Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Shot in 4:3, beautiful contrast. But does it need high dynamic range to add to it? No, the black and white adds to it. But at the same time, it's like that alone, in and of itself, is an effect that a filmmaker may choose to tell their story that doesn't necessarily fit within their guidelines. And so I'm sitting here thinking, but can this not be on an as-needed basis? Can this not be a situation where Netflix, instead of just going to the award ceremony and saying, well, this one looks like it's getting a lot of critical praise, let's go ahead and snatch that one up and put it on our service. That's why people get this idea about them in the film industry and they get that sour taste in their mouth, is because they're sitting here thinking that Netflix is more just concerned about snatching up things to say, for one, we're making more money with this content, or two, we're using this just to gain prestige within the film industry to make it look like we're a credible player.
Yeah.
Instead, what they need to do is, yes, come to the table, sit down with the filmmaker whose film you're interested in, and you're about to back with all this money, and instead of just throwing money at it, actually be interested and involved in the process from print to screen. And I think that's where Netflix is falling short. I mean, I think Netflix is just getting in there with their pile of money, which they don't have much of because it's all just borrowed, and they're trying to throw their weight around in that regard, as opposed to actually doing, it's like, yes, you've got the understanding down of, hey, at the end of the day, this is where the movie industry is headed. Yeah. And if we say we're on we're in the echelon of what's going on in the industry, and we're hitting all of those bells and whistles, so we're right up there with everybody else. Nothing, no reason to think that we're falling short. But the heart's not in it. I think that's where people, especially in the film industry, they get that bad taste in their mouth and they don't want to do business with you.
Yeah.
Because why should they? It's like you don't really care about what it is that they are trying to tell, the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah. I think this is something that's going to change in the future. This is a rule that Netflix has that has just been implemented or was implemented a short time ago. So it does say that you caught us off guard in the middle of production with this rule change.
Yeah.
Now that the rule has changed, everybody knows going forward. And it says the Netflix manager of creative technologies, he says, we respect the authenticity and representation of your film. We want what you want. So they know that the artist,
they're trying to play that.
They want to. Yeah, they're trying to. Yeah, well, they're coming out and saving face now.
Yes,
but they're also trying to say, like, we want more Romas and we want more of those things. Yeah. Otherwise, they would say, I'm sorry, you can't shoot your film in black and white because it has to be HDR.
Right.
You can't do HDR in black and white that well. So it's, I think they want to let it, but I'm sure that's going to be a situation where the filmmakers would have to say, look, we planned on shooting this in black and white. Oh, okay. Well, then never mind.
Yeah.
Forget the HDR.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think they would probably be willing to do that, especially if the film is going to
and get that award recognition.
Award. Yeah, exactly.
And I agree. I think really this is just kind of a lesson for.
It sounds like it was a mix-up.
Yeah, and
right
I think it's a
now.
lesson for lesson for Netflix, and this is what we keep running into. with it.
Communication.
Communication,
Yeah.
and it's like just learn your lesson, Netflix, and actually.
That was MoviePass's problem. Communication.
Yeah, it always is.
Don't be MoviePass, Netflix.
Yeah, please.
They're
don't.
dead now.
Soon
Netflix is going to be dead if they keep this up.
Yeah, if they keep
They're
springing
going to piss
this on
filmmakers
people,
off, and they're going to go to Disney and
Well,
Apple and.
It's funny because for the longest time, like Netflix always had like their fans and the subscribers on their side. When the whole snafu with Oscars came around, most people were like, "That's bull crap." Netflix should be eligible.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I feel like Netflix felt vindicated that they could do what they wanted because fans were on their side. But now that things are starting to
Yeah, a
change,
little cocky.
Netflix
now that
isn't
they
the only one around.
now that
anymore.
they've got competition and fans are fond of different things, Netflix is finding that not everything they do is gold, and they're beginning to realize, crap, the fans are only happy when we make them happy. They're not just happy because we're Netflix.
Yep.
Right.
So
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's why Netflix, you got to step it up. Be on the filmmaker side. Sit down with them at the table before all this.
just do whatever
shenanigans
Steven
begin.
Spielberg
Come
wants
on.
you to do.
That's
Yeah.
right. Steven's my dad. No, all right, guys. I think we're ready to move on.
I agree.
To our unique weekly segment.
Yes.
Are you all?
I'm ready.
Do it.
It's going to be interesting this week. I'm telling you.
Yeah, is it?
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
Story time segment.
Well, we haven't pulled that out in a while.
It's been a while.
I play with that every now and then.
I love it. Did y'all come on.
Story of my life.
We haven't pulled that out in a while. I play with it.
No, we
Every
got
now
it.
and then.
We
Oh
got it.
man, I'm late to the party always.
The double entendre was there.
I love it, guys. I'm telling you, you all crack me up.
Wow, what wonderful stories.
What was the one he told
I
last
know
week?
it was Disney Plus. It's like I'm already. Jacob, I gotta give credit to our buddy Jacob. He sent it to us.
Oh, he
Yeah.
didn't. He was
You
like, I
sent
wonder
us
if
a message.
Jacob understood. It's like we're pretty sure Jacob.
Pretty sure he got it.
Jacob
yeah, that's
loves
why he
double
sent it.
entendres. Yeah.
Okay, that was pretty funny right there.
What, that's what it was. I'm only an hour into Disney Plus and chill, and I've already got a friend in me.
yes. He was like, I wonder if
So
Jacob
good.
understands what that. It's like, yes.
I knew Jacob understood. I'm terrible.
Okay.
I thought it was good, and I wanted to make sure y'all got it. That was all.
We got it.
That was
We
all.
got it.
Great episode for story time this week. Are y'all ready for it?
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a free for all. That's right, guys. Just any story.
Any
you could
story?
think of.
Well, I have a
God.
story.
We've never done this before.
about a man who didn't have his own cut of Justice League.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
I'm sorry. Every time I see those, I'm just like, leave it alone.
It's gonna happen.
Oh, it is.
I want it to happen now.
Yeah.
He freaking jumped on his own bandwagon.
yeah, I know.
He's
How do
like,
you-
Wonder Woman can't be wrong.
Yeah.
Hashtag release
like,
the
how-
Snyder Cut.
Yeah.
I'm like, please
It's like,
release. I really
gosh.
want them to release it now so that everybody can watch it and be like, yeah, this is still a piece of crap. Like,
That's what I'm saying. Can we get this over with? Just
Yeah.
release it and be done with it.
Yeah.
It's like because there's no. I mean, we're all
The movie
complaining
was
about
terrible.
It, but
Like
it's
I
gonna
don't
be
have
terrible.
a problem with another terrible one. Like, it's just like I really don't. I do want to see it though.
I
Because
just think it's funny that everybody's like, it wouldn't have been terrible. What makes you think that? He already did Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, and Man of Steel was me. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great.
yeah, but Justice League was
Justice-
a jumbled mess.
Yes.
And I would like to see his cut just because I don't.
It might not be jumbled.
I don't think Joss Whedon came in and did the movie justice. I don't think he came in and helped
Wait.
anything.
Did y'all get that?
No. I told it and I didn't even get it.
Yeah.
I don't think he came in and did the
I
movie
don't
a favor.
think there was a lot he could really do
And I
without,
get that.
without reshooting the entire
I mean,
film.
they said that he did 80 new pages of story. Like, I mean, that's crazy.
If that's the case, I really want to see this.
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
I really
Because
want to see it.
I'm actually one of those people that thinks maybe it is going to be. Now, if
Nope.
it's better, That's not saying a lot. I'm admitting that.
True.
But I'm thinking we watched the Zack Snyder cut, and
Well,
what
and
if
here's
you're
the
just
thing.
kind of like, well,
I
that
can
is
agree.
better
It's
than the
more.
way it was.
It could be more cohesive because it'll be the whole story.
Then it
won't
would
just
be better.
It won't be just pieces. But yeah, no, I agree. Maybe it's better.
Well,
but
see, now that's not fair either.
But it's
not
that's
fair
like
for them
saying
to
a solid
release-
turd's better than a runny turd. They're both still
They're both turds.
They're both
No,
turds.
I completely agree
But
with
it's
that.
still not fair either because if they release like a 4-hour Snyder cut, which they were never going to do anyway, even
Yeah.
if he was still the director when it happened.
No, yeah.
That's not fair because it's like, oh yeah, we got a 5-hour movie where all the pieces of the puzzle are together. That's not.
Well, his movie
I'm
was
not saying that. I'm not saying that
know.
it needs to be longer. I'm saying,
But I'm
you
just
can,
saying-
you can literally tell the scenes that he filmed
And
and,
the
the
ones-
scenes that Whedon filmed.
Yes, you can.
You can tell.
There's a
and there is it's like
drastic
two completely
contrast.
Yes,
different
there are.
filmmakers making the same movie. They're not going to come out the same, and the scenes don't fit. And I think if you have just all of Zack Snyder's, no matter how bad it is,
I really wasn't
at
meaning
least
to
it's all
turn
the
story
same
time
tone.
into this.
But I'm glad you did because the truth is that's one story that's not going to live to see the light of day, and it doesn't need to. Because the fact
oh,
that
it's going to.
Oh, I
No,
think it will.
well,
I think it will.
I think eventually.
I think it's still
when
a
Warner
farce.
Brothers gets their streaming service up and
if
running.
I think
Warner
it's
Brothers
still a
can put
farce.
it out and make more money off of that piece of crap, then why
well,
wouldn't
of course
they?
they're going to. But
Well,
the
yeah.
problem is how many more millions of dollars is it going to take to get the Snyder
the problem
cut?
is it
I
wasn't
mean,
that's-
probably already
it wasn't
exists.
completed.
I
So
don't know.
there's going to be scenes that were never filmed. There's going to be CGI work that's not complete.
And
so
I think that's
no matter
what-
how it's released,
Which
it's
I
not
looked
going
it
to be
up
a
too.
complete
It was
movie.
$5 million for them to redo Sonic for the whole movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
So which is not a lot considering
No,
that budget.
but still.
But $5 million. So think about how much. That's how much they spent on Superman's
Hey,
mustache.
if they'll spend more on
I
his
mean-
mustache, I was getting ready to say the same thing. Then I'm down.
if they can at least get that scene right,
Yes.
If they
then
can
it'll be
fix
worth the
They
buy.
need to
Superman,
hire
yeah.
that kid on YouTube to
Yes.
come in and
better.
do their CGI
It
work.
literally was
Oh.
After Effects.
Yes.
That's all they did.
I saw a
yeah.
thing on Facebook that said, we really need to go see Sonic and support the movie because the studio actually listened to fans, and that very rarely happens. They spent more money to fix it, and I'm like, yeah, I get the message. It's like studios don't often listen to fans, so the fact that they did, we should support them.
Well, that's the
but
thing.
the movie's still gonna
No.
be terrible.
Okay, yeah, go see the movie and support it. You were the part of the fan that changed it.
Yeah.
Great, good for you.
But
That's
it's
why
still-
they made the change.
it's still
for
gonna be
me, I didn't
garbage.
care. I didn't care either way. I was gonna see it and make fun of it.
Yeah.
But now I'm not gonna go see it because it may be halfway decent with a decent looking Sonic.
Well,
But no.
let's make story time that time you went to the movies anticipating the greatest movie ever, and you walked out like,
Ooh, I got one.
mm.
But I don't want to tell it right away because y'all may. Well, Keith, you were there. You were with me. It was at the start.
Star Wars Episode 8?
No, Gosh, no, definitely not that. But
I'm trying to remember the name of that dang movie. I can't even. It was so bad, I
What?
blocked it out.
which one?
Episode 8.
Last
The
Jedi.
Last Jedi.
Last Jedi. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't think
I
of
was
it.
done 10 minutes
I was-
into that movie.
I was like, I couldn't
this
think
is
of
not
it.
Star Wars.
It was like right when he started drinking that milk.
When he
thing.
started milking the thing, I was like, no, this is stupid.
Movies that I was okay. I'm
You-
not
you-
quite
yeah,
sure
no,
which one you're talking about.
You were a part of it. It was kind of at the start of the fall, okay? And that was Mr. M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh yeah. Lady in the Water.
Lady in the Water.
I enjoyed that the first time we saw it.
I know
not
you
because
did.
it's not because it's a good movie, but
Yeah, but
I
you
enjoyed.
went into that thinking this was going to be the.
You got to understand.
Oh, yeah.
I
Most
am.
epic
I am.
movie.
I
He
am
just did The
junior year in
Village.
high school. He had just done The Village. I'm an M. Night fan.
Yeah.
I'm on
Oh,
the
I
M. Night
know,
fan
yeah.
bandwagon, and I am.
I
Like,
thought it would be
I.
better too.
But you enjoyed it still.
Well, that's just because I enjoyed it for what it was. I didn't think
Yeah.
it was a great movie, but I was just like, as a piece of nonsense, this is really fun.
yeah.
I mean, it was.
Yeah.
It's a fun. I'll still watch that movie today.
I
because
watched it on Netflix
Yeah.
like a couple months
It's-
ago.
it's a
and
I did
I was
too,
like, yeah,
and I
that's
still
good.
hated it.
It's a terrible.
It's all right.
Still
I
hated it.
love it, but not because it's a good movie. I just
Great
love.
Elon.
Yes.
I'm like, this is.
Oh,
it is. It
Scrunts.
is nonsense.
That's why I
Scrunt.
love it.
The
Well, and-
scrunt. I
and
couldn't
I-
think of what
I
it was
If you
still
called.
can
do
think
the-
of something really creative, you'll hook me. It doesn't have to be good.
Yeah.
The scrunt. But no, the thing is,
That's
though,
how you know A Wrinkle in Time is bad because it didn't hook me.
Yeah.
Well, that one was not one you went into expecting anything out of.
No, as soon as I saw Oprah, I was like, this
Yeah.
is gonna be a terrible movie. Anything her name's attached to, I'm like,
know.
this is gonna be bad.
She was like, you get an Oscar. You get an Oscar. And then it didn't happen. Nothing.
No, but I remember going into that film and I was waiting for it to, I was in San Antonio at the time
Yeah.
when it came out, and I was looking forward to, like, that was my big thing to come back to, was we were going to go see it when I got back from the trip.
We did.
And we went and saw it, And
And
I
you were
was
disappointed?
I was like, I don't know what that was.
His heart was.
I
I will
don't know
admit,
what that was.
Brandon was shattered after seeing. He was because at
like-
the time M. Night was his favorite. Like that was his.
He
like
betrayed me.
that's who
He betrayed
he
you.
did. He betrayed me.
I mean, because this was in the very beginnings of Brandon's, like, you know, I mean, he saw Spider-Man, which spurred him into wanting to be a director, and this was right in the thick of like 26 years and him really passionate about directing, and then, you know, his favorite director gave us Lady in the Water, so I understand.
And then not only that, but then it was like, okay, then we get.
It's
what
how
was-
fans felt when they saw Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
Because
that's
you're a
true.
huge
Yeah.
Star Wars fan, and you see Phantom Menace, and you're like,
What?
Well, now
Jar Jar Binks?
I was a kid when Phantom Menace
True.
came out, so
So
I loved it.
I liked it
I loved
too.
it. Now when I
agree.
watch it now, I'm like, no.
But even then, I watched it the other night and I fell asleep. I fell asleep
It's
because
a-
how bored I was. I did not realize how much political crap there was
Oh,
in that
yeah,
film.
yeah.
And I'm like, this is not
Yeah,
Star Wars.
But as a
at
kid,
all.
I loved that movie, and
Well,
I'm
and
just
that's-
like,
I
I don't
did
know how
too.
I wasn't bored when I was a kid.
And that's when when I woke up and it was like them fighting Darth Maul.
Yeah.
I was sitting here. I was like, oh,
Okay.
that's why people saw this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was like, this is.
That's
I was
it.
like literally like a half
that
hour
whole
of
pod
crap.
racing scene,
Yeah.
That
30-minute
was it,
pod
yeah.
racing scene was
That's
just
Star Wars.
worthless.
Both Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones are terrible until the third act. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
you're just boring
yeah.
and terrible, and then you get to the final act
But
when
even
there's
the
action.
pod
and
Yeah,
it's
Order
like, okay.
66.
But
Isn't
even
that
the-
what it's called?
No, that
Order
was the
6
third
that was
one.
third
Third,
one.
I like
Revenge of the
all
Sith.
of the third one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Attack of the Clones is when they're fighting on Geonosia.
Yeah. Okay.
When the Clone Wars finally
Yes,
break out,
yes.
it's like this is what the whole
That
movie
was
should have
awesome.
been,
Yes.
not the
Yeah.
last like 20 minutes.
Yeah, and then speed through the fighting, which is what everybody wants
Yeah.
to see, is a huge Jedi war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. But the fact is like even Phantom Menace, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, it was cool because of the span of how long until that movie came out. You still had you're back in the world of Star Wars, and so much of that, it's like you could overlook the political crap and all the terrible exposition in that movie because you're like everything in there was still living and breathing Star Wars.
Yeah.
So you were in that universe again. And that was why it was still something attractive. Freaking Lady in the Water, man? No. I was like, this is awful. Terrible. I was waiting for the twist.
Spider-Man.
I kept waiting for, and that was the whole twist. The twist was there wasn't one. And it was like, you just made me pay to go see a bad movie. Great
the
twist.
twist
Yeah.
was
It
M.
was
Night
terrible.
Shyamalan's going to save the world with his writing.
Yeah. I thought that was beautifully poetic.
Yeah.
Garbage. Garbage.
I was
I'm
like, a
telling you.
movie that I went and
not that
saw
bad.
that I was highly anticipating and let down by would be Spider-Man 3. Even though I still don't think it's as bad as everyone made it out to be, it's still, after coming off of Spider-Man 2, it's like, how do you go from one of the greatest superhero movies ever made to Tobey Maguire doing the Saturday Night Strut? I mean, I'm like, okay. So that one, yeah. Even in high school when I was younger,
I remember we went and saw
recognized-
that. All three of us actually went and
We
saw
went with
that.
the church.
Yeah.
with New
Yeah.
Salem.
Because I remember that. And
Yeah.
I remember, I didn't
Any
think it
movie
was...
with Topher Grace, I'm out.
Oh.
Any movie with him in it, I'm done. He had that 70s show, and that was
the third
that
Matrix was
it.
the same way. It's like 1 and 2, and then the third one was kind of
A
like
letdown. They tried
like-
too hard.
they did. You could tell that they
I
really
think it
didn't
was
know how
right
to.
around the time they tried
I feel like
to transition.
Yeah, I feel like you could
So
tell
they were
that
on hormone
that they didn't know
blockers
how
and
to
they were
end it.
confused.
They were
Yeah.
like, we got the machine-human war, but we really don't know how to end this. So like
Yeah.
they just kind of
Well, and that's why
They turned
Matrix
Neo
4 is
into a
coming out.
Jesus.
yeah, yes,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
It's
they were just like
that's what they
it
really
took a
did.
really
They turned
bizarre.
him into Jesus.
I don't
Is
know.
basically what they did.
It was
Yeah.
weird. But
But-
they just reboot the Matrix though, and I'm like, I thought the point was to get everybody out of the Matrix, and now it's just like status quo again. I was like, it was weird. I'm like, okay, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just odd because there's like
Wait, Matrix or Spider-Man 3?
both.
Both?
No, Matrix, because like at the end they reboot everything and the Matrix starts back up, and I'm like, so they didn't save anybody. Like the people are still connected to that's what I was
Now there's
confused about.
just peace between
Yeah,
the
there's peace
machines and
between the
humans.
machines and the people, but we're still
They're
being
still
used
slaves.
we're still being used as batteries.
Batteries,
So
yeah.
I'm just like, did we win? Like I don't know. I was disappointed with it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you, Sean? What about a movie that you walked into?
It's tough because I'd like to think that there's been several, but I'm gonna say like the most recent one is Last Jedi.
Yeah, Last Jedi.
Like
yeah.
I mean, literally, because a lot of people didn't like The Force Awakens. I thought that movie felt more like Star Wars than any of the prequels.
Yes.
So I did appreciate that, and I did like the movie. I
I
thought
mean,
it was
even
great.
if it was a New
Harrison
Hope
Ford was
2.0.
great. Like I
Yeah.
really, they brought everything back to the way I wanted it, and I liked it. It was a carbon copy of A New Hope, but Still,
But it was a way to
it
get
was
us
a good
back
movie.
on track.
It did, and
Right.
it did.
Right.
So I really thought Last Jedi was going to be like this. I'm thinking A New Hope is good. Empire is awesome.
Yeah.
And to me, Empire's the best of the original trilogy.
Yep.
And I'm thinking Jedi is gonna follow along those lines and make this epic, amazing middle movie.
Yeah.
And then the third movie is going to slow things down
Wrap
and
it up.
finally wrap it up. And then I got The Last Jedi, and it was
Wow.
the worst Star Wars movie I've ever seen out of all of them. Like, I like The Phantom Menace more than Last Jedi. And
Yeah.
I left the movie theater just
Well,
like
Keith's
I got out in
yeah,
the parking lot. We were
I really
with
gotta
Neil,
think about it.
and I got out in the parking lot, and I was just shaking my head because I'm like,
Yeah, no,
this is not Star Wars. Even in the middle of the movie, I was mad. Like, I was cussing in the middle of the movie. I did. Like,
now he's milking this damn
I
thing.
did. I looked over it. I don't know who it was sitting next to me, but
Probably
whoever
Rick.
it was,
I think it was
said,
Rick.
I just said, this is bullshit. Like, I hated this movie. I hated that movie, and I still do. Like, I have the movie at home, and I have never watched it.
I haven't
I
watched
have not
it.
watched it
I haven't watched
since
it
I
a
bought
second
it.
time.
I have rewatched
And it was like, I only bought it
What
so
did
that
you
it
think?
fills the gap on my shelf.
Oh, really? It just feels.
I've actually been going through like all of Star Wars again, leading up to Rise of Skywalker, and I haven't gotten nowhere near that far yet.
Yeah,
I'm still in the prequel era.
Right.
But having rewatched Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, I will say it's like, yes, the dialogue and acting in those movies are bad, but the world building, the story building, I was like, they still contribute to a whole, and Last Jedi doesn't contribute to a whole.
Yes.
So like after
Exactly.
rewatching them, I'm like, it's sad to say, as bad as those movies were, I agree they were better than Last Jedi because
it's like,
they build into everything.
The problem is that Rian Johnson chose a pivotal movie within a new trilogy that was canon
To try to
the Star
subvert
Wars saga,
everything.
to completely rewrite everything. It's like, no, that's what you do in like a Solo.
This is the
or
penultimate.
a Rogue One.
Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
penultimate
This is-
film of
yes.
this. Supposed to be what's supposed
Why
to
are
be
you
like a 9-chapter
choosing
saga.
to
Yep.
do this now and this to throw a wrench in everything that was set up even in The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden you're throwing a wrench in everything.
All the hope that
we
I
only
had
have
for
one
the
more movie
trilogy
for all of this
went
to
away
come together.
with
Yeah,
that movie.
exactly.
And that's
you
why
have-
I'm kind of like, I do think that Rise of Skywalker is going to be good. I don't think that it's going to be epic. In fact, the more that I'm hearing about all these different storylines,
George saved
and things, and it's
that
still,
happens.
it's still only 80%, agreed upon with audiences what they chose to go with, and I'm like, that's not for a final Star Wars movie. That's not a good percentage.
No.
It needs to be
88
98%.
88's
Like,
higher than most of the prequel movies.
I get that,
but still, yeah.
I'm just like,
for the
that's-
final.
So it's one of the things. I still feel like that movie's going to make some bank. Now, I'm not ready to walk back my statement that it's going to beat Endgame. And I'm not ready to walk it back. I'm not ready to walk it back.
You were holding tight.
I'm holding tight to that.
You're holding tight. You think it's
But
still going to beat Endgame?
I still don't think it's going to be a worthy finish to the saga.
See, and to me, that's ultimately what
and Last Jedi has done that for me. So if I go in with low expectations and JJ gives me something like he did with The Force Awakens, then I'm going to leave happy.
Yeah.
But if I'm just going in with some pretty low expectations after the last movie.
See, and what I've already heard, I'm sitting at the point thinking, I don't know if we can really praise JJ for getting it back on track.
That's true.
Because it seems
could-
like
it could have
from the
been Lucas.
grumblings that I'm hearing, I almost want, if it is a good finish and it is satisfying, and I hope that JJ is a man of character, that if it's not on his shoulders that this came to be, but it is because they turned to George Lucas and he actually set them right,
that he'll admit
I
it.
hope he's willing to admit that it's because of George Lucas.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, it's justification for everything that George Lucas was upset about with how fans reacted to the original trilogy, but it's also a catering to understanding that this is what George Lucas was always good at to begin with, which was understanding the world he
building,
built,
yeah.
but at the same time not being good in terms of executing a singular story.
Story and world building, he's great. Yeah, the script writing and dialogue, it's like, no, he needs someone to guide him through. But I mean, as far as
And that's
like
what we got
how,
in the
yeah.
original trilogy.
Uh,
That's why they are so timeless.
I think it's crazy that like all of the side stuff, like the Clone Wars TV series, the Mandalorian, Solo, Rogue One, all of the side stuff in the last decade that's come from Star Wars has been incredible and amazing. But the main saga has not, and it's like it saddens me because it's like you trust like all these other people to make these side stories and give them free reign because you're like, oh, it's just a side movie. It doesn't matter. And they make these amazing things because they're true fans. But when it comes to the actual saga, you don't turn it over to a true fan. You're like, well, we have to be very careful because this one is more important. And then you ruin it. It makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. You think they would be more delicate.
So
And actually getting the people involved and not being ashamed to go to those who should be involved at the very outset. And that should have been somebody like Lucas. Not sit down and say, we'll take it from here.
He may have went senile with the prequels.
Yeah.
But I'm still saying this is the guy who created this entire world.
Yeah.
Basically by himself.
Yeah.
And
you're going to shirt
that. Don't keep him out of the loop. Like, you need to go to him for, I mean, basically, he's your Star Wars Bible. It's like if you want advice and you want wisdom on how to go forward with this, you turn to that Bible. Go to him.
Even Amazon, working on their Lord of the Rings series, has turned to Peter Jackson. He didn't even create Lord of the Rings. He just made the movie.
But
so it's like
they're going with the films.
They kind of had to because Tolkien's estate's like, screw you.
Yeah, Tolkien's
screw
estate,
everything that wants to do with media.
Yeah, they are. But I mean, it's so funny that it's like even Amazon realizes here's somebody that we know is passionate about the subject and will turn a good product, so they go to him for advice. And then Disney is like, well, George Lucas made the prequels. We're going to distance ourselves as much as possible. It's like, no, people don't hate George Lucas as much as people bash George Lucas because of how bad the prequels were. But we all still respect
we've
Lucas.
Definitely ripped on him, but we
all still respect him for what
it's
he's
kind of
done.
like until you show me something worse. We
you
thought George Lucas was bad, and then we got Last Jedi, and it's like, no, George Lucas had it all figured out. Bring back those midi-chlorians.
Like, actually, we want to know where they come from.
That was a way better idea.
They come from Baby Yoda.
It's just one of those things where it's like, I think everybody has recognized the fact that George Lucas can create. He's great at world building. He's just not great at executing. So it's like, let him do it. Let him create the story for you, and then you create the script and direct the movie. It's like. But Disney knew better, or thought they did. They had Kathleen Kennedy.
Well, and now they don't because she's out.
Yeah.
And I think ultimately what all this is that with all of our movie experiences that we've walked into and had high hopes for and have been disappointed by, we are hoping that Rise
Avatar
of
2. Well, I'm hoping Avatar 2 lives up to the hype.
Yeah. we know that's not going to be the case.
I'd say Transformers was another one for me.
Yes.
I went to. Oh God.
Sorry. Actually, I wasn't completely disappointed in the first one.
No. Believe me, I left the movie like with my jaw dropped
on
because
the first
of the
one.
Spectacle.
Yes,
because of the spectacle.
Put the cube into my chest.
Yes, but as far as the story goes and getting the characters right, I don't think that's a good movie. Yeah, I was disappointed.
The second one is really because I like the first one for what it was. Seeing them in live action just blew me away.
Yeah.
And as a Transformers
Optimus Prime in the alleyway when he transforms for the first time, and they do it
fulfills
super,
all
they do
of
it
your
slow.
nerd
I was just like
wishes.
Oh, like I think I had an orgasm.
Yeah.
It was really bad, but actually it was really good. But
when they're making like jokes with dogs humping each other, and I'm just like, okay, this is getting
Wick Wiki, stop Wick Wiki. Like I was just like, this is getting kind of stupid. But yeah, it wasn't like a total like you just destroyed my childhood.
I felt like they wasted too because I felt like Shia LaBeouf could have been great in that role.
Oh yeah, he could have.
He's funny.
Played the character.
He's fun. Yeah.
I mean, as far
they
as
went overboard with a lot of the scenes with him and his
they
mom and dad.
needed someone besides Michael Bay because Michael Bay can't do drama.
He was just doing a spectacle film.
Yeah, Michael Bay can do spectacle. Cool. He's great at that. He can't do serious. Look at Pearl Harbor.
Yeah,
he can't
I don't know when they're twirling around in those freaking aircraft hangar and those
Midway was a better
parachutes.
movie than Pearl Harbor.
I
Roland Emmerich
would agree.
outdid Michael Bay.
And that's saying a lot.
That is
You
the
know.
king of disaster flicks versus the king of spectacle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's saying a lot.
Yeah,
That is.
that's because he left the stupid love story out of the war movie.
Yeah.
It's like we don't need that.
That's true.
Honestly, I think if Midway had a different director with the same script, it could have been a really great movie.
I'd agree with that.
Great. I'm glad.
Okay.
I just thought. I'd
Any
throw that
other
out there.
letdowns, or are we done?
No, I think we're done. Because I think really we're hoping and waiting for Rise
conversation
of
was a letdown.
Skywalker, and we're just hoping that Rise of Skywalker.
It's really what it is. We really don't
Yeah,
want to
that's
be.
what it is.
I love the Star Wars franchise so much. I just want to have it. It doesn't even have to be the greatest Star Wars movie ever made. I just want it to wrap everything
a good
up.
finish.
Yes. Please give me just a solid finish.
Not a Game of Thrones season 8 finish.
No. There. That's it wasn't in theater, but that's one that.
That's one right
and
there.
throughout the entire season, I kept telling myself, "This is
It's
great.
gonna get better.
This is great."
gonna
They're
get
just
better.
building to it, and
Yeah.
then when it finally ended, I was just like, I don't know. Like I just like none of it made sense.
No, not with the rest of what we had already seen.
Not with.
No.
I mean, and it wasn't even. Yeah, we could keep going forever, but
Yeah,
we should just
better
finish
stop.
this.
There's a lot of
Touchy
disappointment.
subject.
There's so many disappointments
Opening up
out
old
there.
wounds.
So many things that are disappointed.
You know what didn't
But you know
disappoint me?
what?
Breaking
What?
Bad. That ended great.
The Breaking Bad, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Talk about a fantastic
Yeah.
trilogy.
Lord of the
Very
Rings, not so much the
well
Hobbit.
worth it. Yeah.
The Hobbit was.
Damn
I
it,
don't.
why do you keep bringing it back to
I
disappointment?
don't dislike. I don't dislike the Hobbit, but I will say that Desolation of Smog I thought was the best film of those three. Battle of Five Armies.
I didn't like the Battle of Five Armies.
I like
at
the
all.
Battle of Five Armies, but I didn't like the battle. Like the battle was fine.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
The
it's
battle
like-
was too
yeah.
much.
Yeah, it was
Like,
too
I was
much.
like, this was too over the
Yeah.
top.
Yes, and I thought, but
Especially considering all the bigger battles we're supposed to have in Lord of the Rings, it's like this is just too much.
but I thought, and I thought for them to have to split it up into 3 movies just to make the more money, that's why they went with that route.
If
And
they
I,
had just
and I thought it was fun spectacle, but it was not where it wasn't the meat until after the battle
Yeah.
was over, and I saw like I like the rounding. I mean, he did a good job with the material.
yes,
that he was.
I
Giving
think it
him
would have
with what
been
he had.
better if he had just split it into 2, added in the extra stuff he added from the appendices, and just left it as because. Really, The Hobbit only needs to be 1 movie, but with that added stuff, I can understand.
Yeah.
Splitting it into 2, 3 was just too much. That was too much.
I agree. But hey, you know,
Okay.
if there's too much for
We're still
everybody
going.
out there,
Yeah. We're still
I'm saying
going.
exactly. Email us at horrorpodcast@redmoonproductions.com if you have a disappointing movie that you want to tell us about. That's all you got to do.
Yeah, the Ben-Hur remake.
Oh my gosh! We just keep.
You know, I wasn't disappointed with
There's
that
been a lot
because
of
I
them.
didn't
You
expect
knew it wasn't gonna
Yeah,
be.
the
Yeah.
minute I saw, it, I was like, "This is gonna be
Oh
a
yeah, that
flaming
was that,
turd."
exactly. Yeah, there's some that you
Well,
just.
when Jesus only showed up 1 time in the movie,
Yeah.
I was just like, this isn't what.
Well, I mean, when you
whole
totally
movie's based
get rid
around
of
it.
them.
Same with the Ghostbusters reboot when Jesus
Oh,
only showed
God,
up
stop.
one time.
We gotta stop. rmpodcast@redmoonproductions.com.
That's it. That's right. Email us at rmpodcast@redmoonproductions.com if you have any movies that you were disappointed in. That's right. You, Keith. That's right. Where at?
RM Podcast at Red Moon Productions. Epstein didn't kill himself.com.
Oh! He threw it in there. He threw it in there. That's right, Sean.
just
Yeah,
had
we're
to.
not on Fox News
I
right
had
now.
to.
I know. All right.
All right, guys. Until next time, I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And
Keith Cheatham.
so until next time,
I forgot who I was.
Wow. It was
we'll
like a question.
see you at the movies.
Movies.
Oh,
Oh.
terrible.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.